and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Allie.
And this is Euros 2025 coverage. This is episode 2 of our previews. Group B is up and on deck, and it's Spain, Italy, Belgium, and Portugal. Allie, remind the people, what do we do in these?
But before we get into Group B, we have some breaking news about Group A in the fact
Oh my God, I don't even know what this is. I'm so excited.
Unfortunately, it's not good news. Ramona Bachmann has announced that she tore her ACL in training, so will not be part of the Switzerland team in her home Euros. This is an absolute bummer because we talked about Bachmann in our Group A preview, and so unfortunately she announced that she tore it in training, in prep, and so
upsetting.
Best wishes go out to her, but yeah, to not be able to play in your home Euros is a double gut punch.
It's always so terrible, the injuries that happen. I mean, it's obviously always terrible when the injuries happen, but when they happen so close to the tournament and you almost made it, and you're right, for the home Euros, it's just extra upsetting. Not to mention she's a key piece for Switzerland. But back to Group B.
Yes, sorry, I had to get that in there.
I'm glad you got that out. Back to Group B, which we are here to preview. Spain, Italy, Belgium, and Portugal. Allie, you want to remind the people how this is going to go?
Yes, the way it's going to work, we're going to run through each team, talk about their key players and what we think their chances are. We will then predict the final running order of that group, who will qualify and who will miss out. And then we'll bring it all together for you in another episode where we may change our predictions. Who knows? We're a bit wishy-washy, so who knows?
I'm really excited to go through these teams one by one because there's a lot to say and a lot of different things to say about all of these teams. I will say in this intro, before we dive into our first team, which will be Spain. Spain, Belgium, and Portugal are all in the same Nations League group, League A, Group 3. Boy, I'm sensing a pattern here, Allie. Are you?
Yes, there does seem to have been a bit of how random was the random grouping.
Yep, kind of. Or how many options do we really have when it's just European countries, mainly all from League A? Anyways, so much to say here. Let's get into it. Kicking it off with Spain, because why wouldn't we kick it off with Spain, Allie? Always so much to discuss about this team. Unfortunately, on both the positive and the negative side. But I don't even know where to start. Let's just head right into it. Currently ranked number 2 in the world behind the U.S. women's national team. Kind of LOL about that, but also not really. If you look at some of Spain's recent performances, that is definitely, obviously FIFA rankings are what they are, but
can I just say FIFA rankings are a joke in the fact that the North Korean team is still in the top 10 despite not having played a match in 3 years.
That's really funny. Yeah. I would say this is purely based on the fact that Spain won the World Cup in 23, the U.S. won the Olympics in 24. Obviously very different tournaments, but let's do it. Some background here on Spain. Obviously, we know they won the World Cup in 2023, but they did not even medal in the Olympics in 2024. They were in a group with Japan, Brazil, and Nigeria. They won all 3 matches in the group stage. They narrowly beat Colombia on penalties in the quarterfinal, and then they lost to Brazil 4-2 in the semifinals. They went to the bronze medal match and they lost 1-0 to Germany, and it was a lackluster performance. Unfortunately, we have to say that the head coach is still Montse Tomé, the successor to he who shall not be named, who is not much better, if better at all, than he is. And that's still a really big issue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you can see that reflected in the Spanish performances. If we get right into it, it's one of those things that makes me laugh because they are a powerhouse team. Of course they are. They won the World Cup. They are up there. But they are so hit and miss. You never know which Spain you're going to get. And we're going to talk about their Nations League performances. And on paper, they had an absolute fire qualification. Right. They won 5, drew nothing, lost 1. But they were so shaky. Yeah. And very few of those performances were convincing. I
can tell you why. I feel like I can tell you why right now. And it's because the success that comes is because of the players, not because of the tactics, not because of the coaching, not because of the managing. It is simply the fact that Spain have some of the best players in the world right now, and whatever they can put together on the field is going to be what is on the field, not the tactics again. And it's unfortunate how many teams have really come out and said, we won this in spite of our coach. And that's certainly what Spain have said about the World Cup. Obviously, previous U.S. women's national teams have said that, unfortunately. And that's a terrible, terrible trend. But the reason people wouldn't be convinced about Spain winning this tournament is exactly that reason. The reason that they are so up and down is exactly that. Like, there's not really scouting. There's not really game plans. It's the players trying to figure it out on the fly, on the field, period, the end. And that's insanely disappointing.
100%. So I'm a little concerned about what Spain's going to turn up to these Euros.
How come? Because of all of that? Or because they've been through a lot of games, like just the wear and tear?
Yeah, they've been through a lot of games. We're going to go through the squad very shortly, and you look, and there is a good chunk are from the Barcelona side, which obviously have played all of their league games. They managed to get all the way through to a Champions League final. Very little break, and now they're going into a major tournament. Like, that is we've had players duck out of tournaments for less.
All right, so let's talk about the roster. There's 12 changes to the roster that won the World Cup. Fewer changes to the roster since the 2024 Olympics, of course. But I think the biggest call out here has to be there's no Jenny Hermoso, who is Spain's all-time top goal scorer. She's at 35 years old. She plays in La Liga MX, but of course we can't ignore all of the, quote, off-field stuff that she has brought to the Spanish national team. Rightfully so, obviously. But, you know, it's hard to look at that and say, oh, she wasn't called up simply because her play wasn't at the right level. You have to look at that and say, we know why she wasn't called up. And it's to silence her voice.
I was going to say, because a 35-year-old Hermoso is still one of the greatest players in the world right now. So you would kill to have on your team.
I wouldn't go that far, but I would say her international play is pretty much bar none. Like, she still contributes to that Spanish national team in ways, like, I remember I did not expect her to bring what she brought to the World Cup. That was 2 years ago, but also it was only 2 years ago, and they wouldn't have won that without her.
No.
Yeah. I guess also notably, Misa Rodriguez and Laila Codina both missed out on the roster. Thoughts on those two, Allie?
I mean, for me, Codina is an interesting miss, because having seen how she's played during the season for her club, second to none. Like, I get it, because like the manager says it was hard to pick 23 players, but we had to do the job professionally. At the end of the day, that is what we have chosen. It's still concerning.
Actually, she said that about Jenny Hermoso. So, and thank you for bringing this up. So can we say this quote, because this is. So this is Montse Tomé, head coach of the Spanish national team, asked about how Jenny Hermoso was left off the roster. And she said, obviously this is a translation from Spanish to English, so it's loosely translated. She said, quote, "I understand Jenny is an important player. I spoke with her at the beginning of the year about her situation. We have done the same work with her as with everyone else." Interesting that she included that. She continued, quote, "We have assessed her performance for Tigres and spoken with her coach, but in her position, we have Patri Guijarro, Atiana Bonmati, Alexia Putellas, Maite Zubieta, Vicky Lopez, and Mariona Caldente, or Claudia Pina can come in there as well." And then she finished it off by saying, quote, "It's hard to pick 23 players, but we do the job professionally. At the end of the day, that is what we have chosen." Saying a whole lot and also not really saying a whole lot. Listen, the only part you can't argue with is that you look at the midfielders. Interestingly enough, they've only chosen to bring 5 midfielders, which I think is weird. You look at their Olympics roster, which is a smaller roster. You're only allowed 18 players in the Olympics, and they brought 6 midfielders of the 18. You look at this roster, which is a 23-person roster, an extra 5, and they're only bringing 5 midfielders, 1 fewer. Now, some players listed in the forwards category obviously can play in the midfield, as noted, like Mariana Caldente. She's listed in the forwards. Atiana del Castillo, who plays for Real Madrid, she's listed in the forwards category. She can play in the midfield. and of course Claudia Pina. Still, though, I think it's an interesting note. You have very few midfielders, and you're not calling in Jenny Hermoso. I think it's. I do more understand kind of why Laia Codina wasn't included. I could see her narrowly missing out, and you also have to wonder if players are more being punished for not playing their domestic football in Spain. And I know that can sound like I'm pulling that out of nowhere, but a reminder to everybody, this is the Spanish Federation that has not changed at all since what happened in 2023 when they completely defended their head coach, when they completely defended the president, when they were completely in the wrong, and nothing's changed. So I think that's worth calling out.
100%. I'm also there are 11 Barcelona players in this squad.
Mm-hmm.
In a squad of 23, nearly half of them.
I'm not surprised at that, though.
No, I'm not surprised, but it's just basically it's basically what everybody said about the Spanish national team. It's basically Barcelona with some added extras.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm happy to see Esther Gonzalez in there, plays for Gotham FC, and she's a legend, a veteran. I hope she gets some playing time. I really do.
Same with Lucia Garcia, who is currently at Monterrey at the moment.
All right, let's talk about some recent results and what we're expecting from Spain. We mentioned, you mentioned how well they've done in their Nations League group. They're in a group with England, Belgium, and Portugal. They're currently sitting first. They finished first with 15 points, 5 wins and 1 loss. They beat Belgium twice. They beat Portugal twice. They split games with England, 1-0. England won in February, and then Spain won more recently, 2-1, June 3rd. Their friendlies, they're going to play one last friendly before the Euros on June 27th versus Japan. I love that.
I'm excited by that one.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's kind of becoming like a really, almost a little like rivalry in the international game since 2023.
Yeah, for sure. And again, they play such different styles of football, so it's going to be a great test for Spain because, like I said, they've come out shaky. Like in at least 2 of those wins in Nations League, they've had to come from behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and notably, they haven't played any friendlies in 2025, but in the winter of 2024, so right before the turn of the year, which was still very recently, they drew with Italy 1-1, and they also drew with Canada 1-1. And when you say shaky performances, I would say those results qualify in that category.
Oh, 100%, especially the Italy one. And no offense to Italy, and we'll talk when we talk about Italy, but that should have been a nice, easy game for Spain, and it really wasn't.
All right, let's move into what we expect. We didn't really dive into the history of Spain because I think at this point it's pretty well documented. We've talked about it a lot, and so we're not going to dive into the full more than we already have. So let's talk about what we expect from them. You're saying you think that they're shaky. We're not sure what we can expect. I'm going to ask you to say which Spain you think is going to turn up. And I can go first if you want.
No, I will say I think it's going to be Spain are going to be a grower. They're in a group that's going to allow them to be a bit of a grower. So I do think that they are going to qualify. I think it's going to be one of those ones where the first game, it might be they nick it 1-0. It might be they have to come back from a goal down to win 2-1. And then we're going to see them grow and get better. But because it's just this last year in Nations League has been off. So I do think that they are going to build themselves up. But then we saw it in the Olympics that they crumbled and barely made it to the semis. So, an honest answer, I don't know.
I'm going to look quickly at the bracket here. Coming out of Group B, if you win Group B, you're going to get the runner-up of Group A. So Group A and Group B will meet in the quarterfinals. So 1A, the winner of 1, will get the runner-up of B. So 1A plays 2B and then vice versa. 1B plays 2A. So you look at this and you look at Group A. Group A, we just talked about, possibly one of the easier, if not the easiest groups, right? Allie, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Switzerland. Yeah. This bodes well for Spain going far in the tournament. In terms of play, I think exactly what we talked about. We're going to see the Spain that we all know, obviously, but they're going to be shaky. They're going to be a little more disjointed. They're not going to be as ruthless, I don't think, as we're used to. And I think as they get deeper into the knockouts, that's what's going to show. We don't really need to say what style of play we're going to see from Spain. We already know that. But I think that they're not going to be challenged all that much in this group. It's two teams that they're really familiar with from the Nations League that they beat twice already. And one team that, when you look at who they are, Italy, probably Spain's going to roll over them. So they're not really going to be challenged in the group. They're probably not really going to be challenged in the quarters. And they might get hit with a brick wall when they hit the semis. If and when they hit the semis. I'm just assuming they will. If they don't, I think we're all going to be as shocked as we were when Germany didn't advance out of their group stage in 2023. All right, should we move it along?
Let's move it along. So, our second team in Group B is Italia. It is Italy. This is an interesting team. So, let's quickly go through their past tournament performances. They did not qualify for the Olympics in 2024. They were in the World Cup in Group G with Sweden, South Africa and Argentina. They won 1 but lost 2, so they finished third with 3 points, so therefore did not advance. And then in the Euros 2022, they were in Group D with France, Belgium and Iceland. They finished fourth with no wins, 1 draw and 2 losses, and again did not advance. They are a pretty new-ish team on the international scene.
For sure.
They haven't qualified for many tournaments. They've started having a bit of a run in the last couple of years, but they are a new team in terms of qualification on the international scene.
That is extremely accurate. When you look at their history, they qualified for really early European championships in quite literally like the early 90s. Through mid to late 90s, and then essentially suffered a complete decline starting in 2000, which at this point, unfortunately, was a very, very long time ago. And then they didn't qualify again for the European Championship until 2013. So, as you said, they've kind of burst slowly back on the scenes. They didn't really come up on our radar as a team that could even do anything really until the last Euros in 2022, I would say.
Correct.
And there's still a lot of work to do, I would say, in Italy and with the federation. This is a federation that in my eyes is like still pretty far behind in terms of investment in the women's side. For example, their head coach, whose name I'm probably going to butcher because it's Italian, and I'm going to say it like it's Spanish because that's the only accent I have other than my own. Andrea Sonsin, who is a man. He has like no coaching experience. He played from 1995 to 2017, and his coaching records are as follows. In 2022, he was the Venezia interim coach, which is, as Allie just said to me, the men's Venice team. For the final 5 games of the season, he failed to help them escape relegation and was not offered the permanent job. And then he went back to a role as a youth coach. And then later that same year in 2022, he was the interim coach once again for 1 game and then was not hired. And then somehow, in September of 2023, right after the World Cup, he was offered the head coach of the Italian women. I don't really think I need to explain myself when I say that the federation is behind the times. And that is my proof.
Yeah. Also on Sarah's notes, I just put massive eye roll.
Super massive eye roll.
It's true because we saw it with England with Phil Neville. These mediocre men fall into high ranking roles. And unfortunately, it's not doing Italy much good because if we look at their, again, Nations League is the benchmark we are using at the moment. They managed to beat Wales twice. They lost to Denmark, but then also beat them, so they split the difference. And then lost to Sweden, but then drew 0-0. So it's been a mixed bag for Italy.
They've kind of been like this for 4 or 5 years now, where maybe more for like 4 years now. They can be really disjointed and look pretty terrible, or they could challenge a team on any given day. And they were like that in the previous Euros as well. They were pretty fiery, super transitional, and it caused some problems for teams. And I think that I expect that again from them here. You look at their Nations League results, and it kind of spells that out as well. They lost only by 1 goal to Sweden, and then they drew 0-0 with them. Those are 2 solid results against a good Swedish team. But then you're going to lose 3-1 to Denmark, which, no disrespect to Denmark, I don't think that they're necessarily in the top here. And then they only beat Wales 1-0 one time. So it can be up, it can be down. They're just going to be a transitional and fun team to watch, I think. And they're the only team in this group that hasn't been playing the rest of them in Nations League.
Yeah, so they are going to be that unexpected factor for the rest of their grouping. I am concerned about Italy. I'll say that from the jump, because we haven't had their squad lit. They haven't announced at the time of recording who's going to the Euros. But if we go off of who's been playing for them in Nations League, it's pretty much, bar one player who plays for a French team, they all play in Italy, which, as we have mentioned, is an underfunded league. They are not up there at the moment in the top European leagues. I'm sorry, but they're not. You know, it's normally split between Juventus and Roma, and that's because they're the 2 teams that have actually managed to put money into their women's team. So that, for me, puts them on the back foot, because they haven't been playing. You know, we talk about the Spanish league being a bit, Barcelona and the rest, but the Barcelona team have played in Champions League, so they've played great football against great players in their league football, whereas the Italian players have only been playing each other. And that concerns me, because I'm not saying that they can't be great players. Of course they can. It's just they're not having that constant competition.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. You're talking about the competition aspect of it, where they're not playing in top leagues. They're not playing the top competition. What happens then when they come up against the top competition?
Exactly.
I'm just going to add to some of their up and down results. We mentioned some of their... So they've actually played Spain. That was back in 2024, but less than a year ago. They drew 1-1 with Spain, who are in this group. So that's an interesting note. They beat Germany 2-1 also in late 2024. But then they lost 5-1 to England as well and drew 0-0 with Ireland. So up and down, truly, perhaps this is a group of unpredictable teams, Allie.
Yeah, they really are, because you never know who you're going to get.
All right, let's finish on style of play and or players to watch. What do you expect from this Italian team? Because they really did kind of steal your heart in the previous Euros. Them and Iceland.
They did. Because I love their style of football. Their style of football is that attacking, let's just throw everything up front football. And I do love that. I really do. So I think we're going to see that again, because they have to. They have to go for absolutely everything in this group, because they need to score. They need to get the points on the board. And that, unfortunately, will mean they're vulnerable at the back. That's my fear, because it's going to be so attack heavy. If we go based off of what we've seen with their Nation League's performance and previous things, is they like to go for it, but then that means players can get behind them. So I'm not expecting them to qualify. There's a spoiler alert for my predictions.
Really?
I'm not expecting them to qualify, yeah.
I mean, I just want to look at their Nations League result quickly, because... Okay, they had a shutout against Wales, they had a shutout against Denmark, and they had a shutout against Sweden. So half of their games they played, it was a shutout. And they were only shut out once, and that was in their 0-0 draw against Sweden. When you look at it that way, it bodes pretty well.
Yeah, no, I do think it does bode well, but then they're Spanish. Plays the way they get behind, and we saw it with Belgium when we come on to Belgium, Woolart getting behind.
Fair enough.
I love it, Italy. I love them dearly, but I don't have the greatest of hopes. Our third team is Belgium, the good old Red Flames. Now, this is a great underdog team. If you want to find an underdog, Belgium are your underdog, and I'm going to make that statement.
I agree.
Right now, because on paper they've got some fabulous players, and they do play some really interesting football. If we go past tournament performances, they again weren't in the Olympics. They also didn't qualify for the World Cup, the most recent one. However, in the Euros, they advanced in group, the second in the group behind France, against Iceland and Italy, they went 1 win, 1 draw, 1 lost in that group stage, but then lost to Sweden. Only 1-0 in the quarterfinals.
I totally agree that this is kind of like a sleeper pick. I think, and the main reason why, you mentioned the players, for me the main reason why is their brand new head coach. So in January of this year, news that the Red Flames had appointed Elisabeth Gonestatier as their new head coach dropped. Now, listen to the stark difference between this and what we just talked about with Italy's head coach. Gonestatier, who is a woman, signed the contract through the summer of 2024. She's the successor to Ivis Snurleys. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. I'm sure I did. Who was at the helm for 14 years before this coaching change. Now, a little bit about Elisabeth Gonestatier, who, if you're wondering if she's Icelandic, you are correct based on that last name. She played for Iceland's women's national team. Then, after a long career, she moved into coaching, starting with the Icelandic club IBV in 2002. Then, she moved on to Völur, which is also an Icelandic team, where she led the team to 4 national titles and a cup victory. Then, she moved to Sweden, and she coached a team in the first division, the Kristianstads DDF, for 14 years, while she was also serving as the assistant coach for the Icelandic women's national team, the senior team, and the head coach for Iceland's U21 squad. What a pedigree.
I was going to say, what a pedigree. That is a great signing for the Belgium team.
I love it. Talking about earning a job, my goodness. And what a stark difference between what we just talked about with Italy.
Yeah, no.
But I love it. And I love this hire for Belgium. And I think that she's going to do wonders. Now, this is a short lead up for her. There's really not. That's the only downside of this, is she didn't have time with the team to really implement detailed tactics of her own. She's had literally 6 months with this squad before a major tournament. So that's, I think we can't judge her impact on this squad based on the results here at the Euros. And I wonder how results focused she might be in this tournament as compared to how focused she might be on just really getting better from game to game.
Yeah, no, 100%. We look at the Nation League results. They were third in a very tough group, out of 4 with 6 points. They lost to Spain twice, but then they lost to England quite heavily 5-0, but then won 3-2. And then they again beat Portugal 3-0, but then suffered a 1-0 loss. So it has been very hit and miss, but they have such a good squad. They are one of the few that have confirmed their roster, and their squad is phenomenal.
Let's talk about their roster. Let's talk about some players to watch and what you're excited for.
So anybody who follows the WSL, you're going to know so many of these Belgian players, because you've got Janice Cayman, who is pivotal at Leicester City this season. You've got Amber Tisiak, who's at my beloved West Ham, absolutely solid at the back. The one that everybody's talking about is the legend, that stabilising force for Belgium, which is Tessa Woolard, currently at Inter Milan. Is a phenomenal goal scorer for them, and it just changes how they play. When they have her on the pitch, Belgium are a complete and utter different team. You've got Nikki Everard as goalkeeper. They're just such a solid squad. They've got my favourite player, one of my favourite players of all time, which is Justine van Hevermet, who's Everton. It's such a stacked squad.
Yeah. I will say, I think that the one thing I'm worried about is the defense and the goalkeeping. You look at their results from Nations League. Their losses to Spain, 3-2, 5-1. England loss was a 5-0. Even their win, though, was 3-2. When they split with Portugal, they won 3-0, and then they lost 1-0. So they kept only 1 clean sheet. And even in their wins, they were letting in a lot of goals. Their starting goalkeeper, I'm going to assume, is still going to be Lisa Lichtvus, who plays for Le Havre in France. But that is going to be their Achilles heel. If they can lock down defensively, I think wonderful things can happen. If not, I think it's just going to be the story of every game, can we outscore how many goals we are letting in? And that's not what you want to be. That's just the worst place to be in terms of tournament football, because that is emotionally exhausting.
Yeah, no, 100%. I completely get where you're going. But for me, they are my underdog dark horse team.
They've got
some interesting friendlies, I have to say, because they're playing France on June the 20th, which is quite a high level competitive game. But then they're playing Greece June 26th. And again, no disrespect to Greece, but you're not known for your footballing nation.
I like it though. I think it's like, get the competition, get the really high level competition, and then get some confidence. Again, no offense to Greece. And finally, let's talk Portugal before we get into Group B predictions. Portugal. What a way to wrap up this group, I'll tell you. Again, also a reminder, Spain, Belgium, and Portugal are all in the same Nations League group. Portugal has finished last, 4th of 4 in the 6 matches that they've played with 1 win, 1 draw, and 4 losses. Now, to dive into a bit of Portugal major tournament more recent past tournament performances. They did not qualify for the Olympics in 2024. In the World Cup 2023, take a deep breath before I talk about this.
I was going to say, I can't believe that you've actually brought this up.
They were in a group with the US, the Netherlands, and Vietnam. In the match, in the third group stage match, they drew 0-0 with the United States, which is effectively, that draw sent the United States through second to the knockout rounds, and then we lost to Sweden. But that's not what we're here to talk about. I was up at 2 a.m. to watch that game. I recorded at 4 a.m. after it. Round of applause to me for doing that. Anyways, Portugal finished third in that group, behind, of course, the Netherlands and then the US. Vietnam finished fourth. Portugal was in third, did not advance. LOL, haha to them for tying us. Just kidding. 1 win, 1 loss, and 1 draw was how they finished. They lost to the Netherlands, they drew with the US, and they beat Vietnam. They were also included in the Euros in 2022. However, they did not technically qualify for the Euros 2022. They were let in, we'll just say it was on a technicality. Really, it was because Russia was not allowed in the Euros because of everything that was happening with Russia and Ukraine. Nevertheless, they caused more of a ruckus in the Euros in 2022 than we expected because they hadn't actually qualified. Nobody expected anything from them. But they caused a bit of a stir in Group C. They were with Sweden, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. They did not get a win, but they drew 1 and lost 2. And I remember us talking a lot about how they were way more of a disruptor, Allie, than we thought they were going to be.
I was at the Portugal-Netherlands game for the Euros, and they were a force because, like I said, nobody knew what they could do. Nobody really knows about the Portuguese domestic league. And they like to play the disruptor. That is definitely a role they like to play.
Certainly. And this will be interesting because they did literally qualify for this Euros. The first Euros that they qualified for was 2017. So this is technically the second one in Portuguese history that they have qualified for because we don't necessarily count what happened in 2022. I do want to take a quick look at their manager because I think that this is
another eye roll.
It's another eye roll, and it's, in my opinion, another red flag when we talk about, okay, but which of these teams has the ability to go far? And when I see a manager like this, I'm probably not going to rank them very high in terms of maybe they could go far. I'm probably going to look at their manager and say, they're not going anywhere. So, manager Francisco Neto, he's been in charge since 2014. He had no coaching experience prior to when he was hired in 2014. He's only 43 years old. He's had the job for 11 years. So he's hired at 32 with basically no experience. We can draw conclusions from that as we will. But listen, the Portugal domestic league has been getting better and better. And this is, again, I think very similar to Italy. This federation is at a pretty important inflection point where they could actually really rise with the rising tide if they decided to truly invest in this women's team. And yes, Portugal's a small nation, but you see what the men's side can do. Like, imagine if you get a real manager. Imagine if you invested more in the domestic league that's already rising, even though you're not really investing. Like, I think that there's a lot of great talent and players here, which we'll come on to in the roster right now, I guess. But yeah, when I look at the manager, I'm just not really impressed. And I don't think that they're going to do much despite the talent that that they have on the field.
Yeah, if you look domestically, we saw the rise of Benfica in the last Champions League, and they got really far for such a small nation. So it's there. Again, it's like if you build it, they will come. It's very much women's football is growing in Europe, and certain nations have really taken it on, and certain ones haven't. And we're starting to see that gulf.
Shall we talk roster?
Let's talk roster. So there's some great players on Portugal that you do know. You may not realise that they're Portuguese. First off, you've got both the Silvas.
Both of the Silvas, yes. That's my first shout out as well.
Who we loved. We loved them in the last Euros. Like, they were so special to watch. And they currently both play for Gotham.
No, they don't.
So it's no, they don't. Oh, no.
Oh, sorry, no. Diana Silva doesn't. Jessica Silva does. But they do both play forward.
Yes, and they play beautiful football.
Tatiana Pinto plays midfield and plays for Atletico Madrid. She's also one to watch. My call out for maybe the biggest question mark is at the goalkeeping position, though.
Yeah, because we saw this with Nations League. They had some interesting issues with the goalkeeper because, again, they could either just nick it or not. And like the last game I watched was them playing England, and they got carved up.
We talked about that on the pod. It was embarrassing.
Brutal. It was brutal.
I wouldn't blame that on the goalkeeper. I would put that on the back line. But like, let's lump the defense and goalkeeper in together and say that's the biggest question mark.
Yes. And so they definitely need to fix that one.
All right, this should be interesting. Let's do predictions.
So we have come to that part of the show where we put our money where our mouth is, and we will predict who we think will qualify first, second, and who will fail to qualify in third and fourth. Sarah's got her pensive face on.
I have to go first this time, don't I?
Yes, you do. Sarah's got her pensive face on.
All right, well, I'm happy I get to go first because this means that if you have the same answer, you were copying me. You're going to be the boring one this time. I think Spain's going first. I'm going to pick Belgium to go second. Italy third, Portugal fourth. But I think it'll be a battle between Italy and Portugal. Maybe I'll put Portugal above Italy.
I was gonna say we were close because the first two I agree with, but I disagree with your order in third and fourth.
I'm gonna put Italy. Wait, I don't know what I said. I have no idea what I just said. I'm gonna put Italy ahead of Portugal based on Portugal's most recent performance against England. So I'm gonna go Spain, Belgium, Italy, Portugal.
So we're boring in the first two because I do think it's gonna be Spain and I do think Belgium are gonna go second, but I think that Portugal will go above Italy.
Why?
Just because I feel like Portugal likes to play the disruptor, and the disruptor gets points when they do that. So I think that they will get more. I have a horrible feeling that Italy may crash and burn, based on who their coach is, based on current performances, and so I can see them getting nothing. So, and that would mean that Portugal beat them. So I do think that Portugal will. They play the disruptor. Disruptor means they get points. They could nick a draw off of a Spain. They could definitely nick a draw off of a Belgium thing. So for me, it's Spain, then it's Belgium, then it's Portugal, and then it's Italy. But I love you, Italy. I do, but I have little to no hope.
The reason I say I put Portugal last based on their performance against England is exactly the following. Defense, in my opinion, really does matter the most in major tournaments for what we've already talked about in this episode, which is it is utterly exhausting to continue to be in a scoring battle or to continue to have to come back from behind. You have to have a defense to do anything in a tournament where you're playing once every 3 days. And if you don't and your defense is running more, it's basically like a downward spiral where the more your defense is working, the more tired they're going to get, the worse they're going to perform in the following games. And for that reason, I think Portugal is kind of doomed.
Intriguing.
We'll see who's right. Maybe this will get flipped on its head, Allie. Who knows?
And that's it from us here at the Women's Soccer Show preview of Group B. As ever, please check out our Patreon. We put extra content on there all the time, including you could have got this a week early. So we will be putting our other preview episodes a week early. So if you want more content, you know where you've got to go. That is at patreon.com/thewoso show.
And since we're in Euros coverage, you know when the next episode drops, and that will be Monday. Group C preview is dropping for you. But again, subscribe to Patreon if you want to just go listen right now. Just go do it. All right, that's it for us here. We'll see you on Monday. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.